my fight song. Take back my life.
7:16 now. Good morning. It's 16 minutes after 7 o'clock. We're looking at about 18 degrees in the Hattiesburg area. Freezing in Washington, D.C. The president's keeping it hot up there, but we do have one of our favorite congressmen on the air with us this morning, Congressman Michael Guest. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good to talk to you today.
Absolutely. Always great to talk to you, sir. We appreciate you joining us on this nippy morning. What is the temperature in Washington right now? Do you know?
I do not. I am fortunate to be home this week. So we flew in late last week. The House, after we got the final spending packages across the finish line late Thursday, we were allowed to leave Washington. So this is a district work week for us. So I'm home this week and glad to be home. Talking to my people in D.C., they got a huge snow over the weekend. The federal offices are closed, were closed yesterday, closed again today. And so it sounds like they're still digging out from that snowstorm that hit the Northeast. So glad to be home, glad to get out before the weather. I'll take the cold and just glad I'm not dealing with the snow and the ice.
Yeah, last week we had Congressman Ezell on Wednesday, and he was telling us pretty much the same thing. I said, be careful if you're traveling. The weather's going to be bad. He said, I'm going to take my chances to get back home to Mississippi.
Look, we were both comparing notes about, all right, what time can we get out? Again, we wanted to get ahead of this coming storm that was coming in. And so me and Ezell and Kelly as well, we were comparing notes to see, exactly what time we thought we would be able to get out of D.C. and what time we would be able to get home. And so we were fortunate to beat the weather. But again, we got a lot done last week, Michael. I mean, we got the last 4 spending bills across the finish line. Those bills are out of the House, now sent to the Senate. Those 4 bills were going to be added with 2 bills, spending bills we passed the week before. So they were combined together, sent over as a single 6-bill package. And that is the appropriations package that the Senate is set to take up this week. There is some controversy in light of the shooting in Minnesota. We've seen that some of the Senate Democrats have now said that they're going to vote against that package, but government funding runs out at the end of the week. So if the Democrats don't pass those spending bills, we will have a partial government shutdown. The second government shutdown in just the last 3 months.
It's amazing to me. I mean, they don't really have any power in Washington right now, but the only power they have is this 60-vote majority that's required in the Senate, not because there's anything in the Constitution about that. It's just some Senate rules. And, that's something I guess, we should discuss with our senators. But, my take on it is people are tired of this nonsense with, 60 votes. You got, even if you have a majority, you can't get anything passed because of the 60-vote deal. And the president can't get a lot of his U.S. attorneys approved by the Senate because you have this blue slip thing. I mean, you don't probably want to get involved in the Senate and their day-to-day business, but I'm going to ask you anyway, what do you think about that? And should the Senate drop these rules so that we can get something done?
I tell you that there's a great deal of frustration on our side of the chamber, on the House side, because we have been able to muscle through legislation that we have sent to the Senate, and that legislation has died in the Senate for lack of a 60-vote majority. And so when you're in the majority, when you control the House of Representatives, the Senate, and the White House, having the filibuster rule in place as it sits today is frustrating. And look, that rule has been changed over time. They used to have what they called a talking filibuster, which said, look, you could get up there and you could speak as long as you wanted to, but you couldn't sit down, you couldn't take breaks. And so even though there was a filibuster process, there was a filibuster process that ultimately had an end to it. Now we see the filibuster has evolved into you've got to have 60 Senate votes before legislation can be taken up for consideration. And that is extremely frustrating. Now, I do remind people that we as Republicans have used the filibuster when we've been in the minority. We've used it to our advantage to keep Democrats from doing some very bad things. Those bad things include making Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico both states, which would result in, more likely than not, 4 more Democratic U.S. senators. We've prevented the U.S. Senate, when we had the filibuster, from taking up legislation that could have packed the court and added additional Supreme Court justices to it. And so, I look at it with both sides right now, Michael, extremely frustrated with the inability to get things done. But I have seen where Republicans have been able to use the filibuster when we've been in the minority to keep the Democrats from doing things that would have completely reshaped the federal government and reshaped the federal government in a bad way, not a good way.
Yeah, and of course, that is something that you need to think about. But there are those out there that say, and even some of the pundits that are on the Democrat side, that they say when they get back in power, they're going to do away with the filibuster, and they're going to do away with all these things that prevent them from being able to do what they want to do. And so, it's kind of like some people say, and I'm just throwing it all out there for discussion. Why don't we go ahead and do it now as a preemptive strike and go ahead and get some of these things passed, like the SAVE Act and some of the things that we want to get, to change the rules on how we elect congressmen and senators and how you can vote and, all of the things that we have been kicking around since Donald Trump has been president. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm of the opinion, and I don't know how you feel about it, that when the Democrats get back in control the next time, this is going to be a whole different world. They're going to change things in a tremendous way. What do you think?
Yeah, and look, I hope the Democrats aren't going to be back in power for a long time, particularly having power where they control both chambers of Congress and the White House. And look, Michael, I'm not lobbying for or against changing the rules, but I do, when people talk to me about that, I do make sure that they're aware, that there's a flip side, that, yes, there is a lot of upside right now, but there is a potential later on, if Democrats were to retake both chambers in the White House, for that to be used against us. But look, we've got to continue moving ahead legislatively. We've got to continue getting things done. The Democrats had the longest government shutdown in our country's history, where they demanded a vote. They ultimately got the vote. The vote failed. But look, I think the shutdown that we saw in the fall was strictly to blunt the momentum of the president, blunt the momentum of Republicans. I mean, we just got past, last week was the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump being sworn into office for the second time. And look, we all got to talk about the great things that the president accomplished. And look, some of those things, even Republicans they become now so common that we tend to forget, just how monumental those things were. Securing the border. I mean, we talked, you and I did, for 4 years about the crisis on the southwest border.
Yep.
If you look at recent border numbers, all right, just to give our listeners kind of a flashback to where things were, in December of 2025, so the last numbers that we have, there were approximately 10,000 encounters along the southwest border. You go back to December of 2023, there were 300,000.
Oh my
and so,
goodness.
I mean, so look at with this president in office, he secured the border. With this president in office, we see deportations are up. We see criminal aliens are being returned to their country of origin after conviction. We see that this Congress was able to keep spending in check, that this Congress and this president, that we've been able to pass the Trump tax cuts, where we extended and expanded the Trump tax cuts. So we extended the tax rates that were in place under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from President Trump's first time in office, and we expanded that with new tax credits for seniors, individuals who work hourly, who are paid for overtime, and individuals who receive compensation by way of tips. We've put DOGE in place, where we've been able to identify over $200 billion and unnecessary spending and funding. We used the rescissions package to claw back unnecessary spending, and now we've passed all 12 spending bills, and we've done that within regular order, something that most people thought we could never do. And so President Trump has been able to build up accomplishments legislatively. And then if you look also what we've done, or the president has done with the economy, I think that the economy is continuing to move in the right direction. Inflation, and we know inflation impacts all of us, that we see the prices of everything have gone up. But I have to remind people that inflation under the Biden-Harris administration was over 9%. Now, under President Trump, we've seen inflation drop below 3%, and it's continuing to go down. Our stock markets are up. Interest rates are coming down. The 30-year mortgage for a home is now below 6%. Gas prices are at a 5-year low. Our GDP in the third quarter, we had a 4.5% GDP growth, and our trade deficit has dropped to the lowest level since 2009. And so, look, the president has done a lot of great things that we often tend to gloss over. And I have to remind people, look, this is a 4-year sprint. It's not, a 4-year marathon. This is not a sprint. Each day we're taking steps to make the lives of all Americans better. And I think you're seeing progress along those fronts. And we've been able to do this in light of that 60-vote filibuster that you talked about, Michael. Even with that filibuster in place, look at the great things that we've been able to do for the American people just in the last 365 days.
And I think the reason for that is because a lot of Democrat senators realize that the American people voted for this stuff to be done, and some of them are running for re-election, and some of them are having some very close races, and they're trying to move to the middle. What do you think?
I would agree completely. I think that particularly in some of these swing states that you've got Democrat senators and in some cases Democrat House members who are voting with Republicans because they feel that helps their ability to get reelected. And look, we know that there's an election coming up in November, not a presidential election, but there will be an election where we will elect all 435 members of the House, and we will elect a third of our U.S. senators. And so the balance of power in both the House and Senate will be in play in November. And so that's why I think it's important, one, that we as Republicans put wins on the board. But you're right. You also at times then bring some Democrats along who are trying to take credit for the accomplishments of the Republican majority.
You know, Senator Fetterman, I've noticed that, he's voted with Republicans several times on some key issues. And I noticed that his approval rating is up into the 50 percentile. And that's pretty good. And that tells you something right there. He's not going to always go for the crazy left. He's going to sometimes move to the right.
Yeah, look, when Fetterman got elected, I thought he was going to be the second coming of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. I had great concerns that he was just going to be a very progressive, very liberal vote in the Senate. But look, he's become, in many cases, a voice of reason in the Senate. In a lot of cases, he votes more as a Republican than he votes as a Democrat. And so I think we need more of those type of individuals in the Senate, that people that will look at working with Republicans to get things done in the best interest of the state and the best interest of the country.
That's right. I'm sorry,
so
we got a hard.
I'm excited about him.
We got a hard break coming. I wanted to congratulate you though for getting the appropriations passed in regular order. That's a great deal, and we thank you for joining us.
Thank you, my friend.